Well, what's going on, guys? So right away we're going to get into the positives, and then right after we'll get into all the negatives of this infamous third episode of The Acolyte. So in this episode, two actors stood out to me. For one of them, this is their character's debut episode, and the other just continues to deliver a performance that outshines the rest. So the first one, surprisingly, is Jodie Turner-Smith, who plays Mother Anastasia, and despite her unbearable to watch interviews for this show.
She's a powerful leader, yes. In a very woman-centered world, which I was very excited to kind of be that, because I feel like Star Wars is very like patriarchal, so it was kind of cool to have like this sort of woman-centered figure.
In my opinion, she plays her part pretty well for what it is. She can believably play a leader of a coven of witches, and in my opinion, she put more effort into this role than the writing deserves, because as we all know, the writing for this show is pretty poor.
You can say that again.
The second is Lee Jung-jae, I still hope I'm saying that name right, who is the actor for Jedi Master Soul. He continues to be the only actor with any kind of screen presence that could keep a viewer intrigued and interested in his character. Lee's performance and the fact that, luckily for us, he has a lot of screen time and appears in every episode continues to give the viewers at least something to potentially enjoy during each episode. In my opinion, he's been carrying this show so far due to his standout acting ability amongst the rest, and that is all I can find for the positives.
What?
I know a lot of people who enjoy this show are not going to like that, and I'm just going to say now, I'm never going to pretend that I like a show that is clearly bad, and so far, unsurprisingly, this show is a train wreck.
Hey, tell me about it.
So now, it's time to get into the negatives. And talk about this show for what it is. And if I may, I'd like to ask the remaining Disney Star Wars shills who have seen this episode and still pretend like nothing bad is going on with Star Wars to please explain to me in the comments below your thought process on Star Wars today and what you thought about episode 3 of The Acolyte, and for why it does anything positive for Star Wars in any way. And all of you Star Wars supporters who don't like to accept any negative opinions of Disney Star Wars can dislike this video if you must, because honestly at this point, anyone that still thinks that Disney Star Wars is good and that it does nothing wrong for the franchise are either extremely delusional, in denial, and just cannot allow themselves to accept how much Star Wars has been butchered,
I don't like where this is going.
or were never fans of George Lucas' Star Wars in the first place. Because every time I see someone shill out for these shows, whenever I debate them, or simply when I just see them give their opinion on a Disney Star Wars show in a comment section or during a debate with someone else, they never make any points that they can back up. They simply just get mad that nearly the entire fan base despises what Disney has done with Star Wars, and whenever you check them with facts, they just do not respond or make up some BS that just isn't true. The numbers show how bad Disney Star Wars is doing in every way, from the ratings to the viewership numbers to the fact that Disney loses money on every Star Wars product because no one cares about it anymore. There are all of these facts and statistics that the Disney shills just decide to ignore, and when you confront them with these facts, they just do not answer, or they don't even respond with a relevant counter to the numbers that you show them. So any of you Disney Star Wars fans who enjoy The Acolyte, and especially The Acolyte episode 3, please tell me down below in detail how it benefits Star Wars and why it's good, why the characters are good. Just any details you can let me know about that can prove me wrong. I'd love to read it and hear your opinion, because I just cannot see how anybody who truly loves what made Star Wars the most popular franchise ever, anybody who truly loves what George Lucas created, would ever find enjoyment in this franchise getting altered and destroyed. Please let me know down in the comments below, and let's get into the video.
It's about damn time.
Your mouth is moving a lot like a rat. Yappa, 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 yappa. Shut it, please.
So, Mother Anastasia says to the twins, this isn't about good or bad, this is about power and who is allowed to use it. First of all, this just isn't true at all. It's always been about the good versus the bad, the dark versus the light, and Disney trying to change one of the key themes of Star Wars, such as the light versus the dark, is just another example of how they treat and respect, or lack thereof, the lore of Star Wars. The next negative that really stood out to me is that the Jedi would never consider training children that have already grown up and gotten used to a certain way of life with attachments that isn't the Jedi way. The only child that the Jedi accepted to train later than they would ever normally allow is Anakin, due to how uniquely special he was. He was the chosen one and was sworn to bring balance to the Force. So to allow Jedi to accept these two twins to start training to be a Jedi around 6 years old is again a lack of respect for the law and alters and changes another rule that the Jedi follow. The next negative is that May suddenly decides that the only way to stop her sister Osha from leaving to be a Jedi would be to kill her.
What?
This is murder! Murder!
What an insanely abrupt and undeserved way to try and cause drama that completely fell flat on its face. It came across as ridiculously unbelievable and outright laughable. Many scenes in this episode were unintentionally funny due to nonsensical decisions made by the characters and the writers. May's sudden decision to kill her sister being a good example of that.
You're goddamn right.
And speaking of writers making nonsensical decisions, why the hell would May burning a book burn down the whole village?
Tell me! How'd it get burned? How'd it get burned? How'd it get burned?
I find myself saying this a lot with Disney Star Wars shows, and especially with The Acolyte. But out of all the ways you could have done this, they decided to do it this way? Really? So you're telling me that the witches decided to live somewhere that literally blows up if something as small as a book starts burning? How the hell has their village even lasted this long? Have none of the witches ever made a mistake or done something even slightly clumsy before? Like burning a book, for example? I mean, we know that witches love to do things like that, and yet this is the first time it's happened?
Don't know who you think you are, but I, for one, have no intention of listening to this kind of insolence.
The fire was able to spread across the whole village and literally blow up the core of it in minutes. I mean, this village is more flammable than smoking a cigarette at a gas station. What the hell is even this?
It's garbage!
Anyway, on to the next one, and that is that the Jedi are not meant to feel or show any emotion and are very disciplined when it comes to that rule. Yet, Jedi Master Sol shows more sadness after the village burns down than both of the twins put together. Now, of course, it was hinted at there being a reason for this, because obviously the Jedi had to do something pretty bad for them to feel this way, and plus we see in this scene that Jedi Master Tobin has his scar that he didn't have in any scene before in this episode. So obviously something went down, which I'm sure we'll find out in another flashback. But even then, the Jedi would still not show this much emotion. I mean, Master Sol doesn't even try to hide his emotion during the aftermath of the event. Does he turn into an emotional wreck after every mission he goes on that includes a death?
Stop it, Ryan. Stop your crying. Stop it. Please stop. Stop. Stop it. Stop crying. Stop crying. Stop crying. Stop.
This show goes out of its way to do very little to respect the lore of Star Wars, which I'm sure you all know by now, considering we're all watching this dumpster fire together.
This is garbage.
None of these things make any sense, and just a reminder that if you guys disagree with anything I say, or have a counter to it, or just want to let me know about something I missed, let me know in the comments below. But anyway, on to the next one. There is absolutely no need to introduce another completely different group of witches into Star Wars. We already have the Night Sisters of Dathomir, who are very interesting with a ton of lore and have stayed consistent and competent. Well, up until the Ahsoka show, of course, thanks Dave Filoni, the guy who was once thought of to many, including me, as the only hope and saviour for Star Wars. And oh dear, did he prove us wrong with the Ahsoka show.
It's garbage!
The Night Sisters as a concept are extremely adored by the majority of the Star Wars fanbase. They were never too important to the core story, and they never severely changed or impacted the lore that George Lucas crafted. They were a very mysterious, unique, and isolated faction in the Star Wars universe that fit in perfectly with the rest of what Star Wars had to offer. There's really no wonder why the fanbase appreciates the Night Sisters and the value that they bring to the galaxy far, far away. However, this new coven of witches, in typical Disney Star Wars fashion, are an unoriginal, dull, uninteresting, self-indulgent, yet extremely important version of the witches that came before. Now, even though I'm happy that Disney didn't decide to give their own take on the Night Sisters in the show, for obvious reasons, the fact that they decided to butcher the main story element of the first 6 movies by allowing these witches to be able to create not just one, but 2 chosen ones by force or magic conception 100 years before the actual chosen one was born is just outrageous. It completely undermines the importance of the concept of the chosen one, and it completely undermines Anakin Skywalker as a character. This only impacts the lore negatively, as it only reduces and impacts the meaningfulness of the first 6 movies. Anakin, the main character in all of Star Wars, is no longer special because this new group of woke lesbian Mary Sue witches have the power to create beings in the same way that the chosen one was made, as easily as they can take a shit. Son of a bitch! This is quite literally the equivalent of the TVA using the Infinity Stones as paperweights in Loki season 1. It just completely diminishes and stomps over everything that came before. So not only does episode 3 of The Acolyte disrespect, change and destroy the lore of Star Wars, it buries the sense of recognition of what Star Wars once was.
You're goddamn right.
Star Wars has now been altered to the point where it doesn't even seem like the same universe of the story that we all know and love since our introduction to it, and that's simply because it isn't. Star Wars is now no more of a story than it is a vehicle for Disney to transfer their woke, feminist, activist agenda onto whoever they possibly can. Star Wars just isn't about Star Wars anymore. Therefore, it isn't Star Wars. Anyway, this episode was absolute trash. We've went over the biggest issues from this episode, but we would be here for hours just mentioning all the little intricate mistakes and negatives about the show in its writing, very awkward cinematography, its awkward editing. I mean, the more you dive into this episode, there's so many issues which I've come across myself, but I haven't been able to note down for this video, so I may have to make a follow-up video, or I could just simply let all the other flaws spread across this whole episode die along with this episode, because this was just a disrespect of what Star Wars is at its core. This episode disrespects the fans, disrespects George Lucas and his creation. No wonder this show is failing in every way. The trailers got dislike ratioed. This series is on a 20% Rotten Tomatoes score from the audience. Terrible reviews. Anyway, this video is long enough. Let me know how you feel down below. Thank you for making it to this part of the video, and I'll see you guys on the next one.
This is not fit for human consumption.